Welcome to Transnational Competition Law classes, and dear learner and viewer, I am going to discuss the comparative law perspective on embarrassment of extraterritorial application of competition law in the developed and developing countries. Dear learner and viewer, you can vividly recall that during the last 3 or 4 lectures, we have been devoting to the aspect of the embarrassment of the extraterritorial application of competition law. And in those lectures which we had with you, we discuss in detail as to what is the difference between the enforcement of extraterritorial application of competition law and the embarrassment of extraterritorial application of competition law in respect to the developed and developing countries. Dear learner, for the sake of recapitulation and reiterating the same thing which we discussed and to bring a cohesiveness and continuity of today's lecture on comparative law, let's have some kind of the exercise which we did. What we did that we neatly pulled out the very notion and concept of embarrassment of extraterritorial application of competition law, and we referred to an article of seminal importance published by United Nations, Geneva, on developing countries' experience with extraterritoriality in competition law in 2021, wherein we have underlined the fact that how out of 40 surveyed countries, 34 countries and jurisdiction has embraced extraterritorial application of competition law to their domestic and national institute. We also refer to the examples from United States, from Latin America, South America, European Union, African countries, Asian countries, Russian Federation, Turkey, India, and then having this example, we try to focus on the point that even if the countries are willing to embrace the extraterritorial provision and clauses to their national competition laws and statute, there happens to be an overarching structure which is governed on the International Agreement on Competition, more specifically the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development's effort in bringing out the notices, circulars, and the regulatory mechanism, along with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And besides these two organizations, we have a non governmental organization known as International Competition Network. And finally, we see that how the passage of the international hardcore and the softcore competition law has been a guiding force in the embarrassment and enforcement of extraterritorial application of competition law, more specifically in the context of United Nations Conference on Trade and Development sets of multilaterally agreed equitable principles and rules for control of the respective business practices. We refer to the United Nations General Assembly's UN set principles and rules of competition and United Nations Conference on Trade and Environment's model law on the competition. We refer in detail the contribution of Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, and we also refer that how International Competition Network happens to be one of the most active organization which have fostered the safe passage of the laws and policies to guide the developed and the developing countries if they have really make provisions for extraterritorial application of competition law, and even if they have been failing in that exercise, then these laws provides an impetus and backup to see that how to see how the enforcement of extraterritorial application in the developed and developing countries vis-a-vis the embarrassment and incorporation and recognition of extraterritorial application of competition law goes very smoothly at national, regional, and global level. Then, dear learner and viewer, you can rightly recall that we discuss various approaches, principles, theories, guiding factors which have a direct influence in the very process of embarrassment of extraterritorial application of competition law. We refer examples from the developed world, we have referred examples of developing world, we have referred the example of underdeveloped world, and we have seen the bull scale curtailment enforcement in Germany. We refer to the Korean Authority. We refer to United Kingdom Competition and Market Authority. We refer to France Auto Right Dealer Concurrence, and then taking recourse to all respective jurisdictions and diversity of the jurisdictions and their modus operandi of extraterritorial application, we try to underline the diversifications and the richness of the approaches to the embarrassment of the extraterritorial application of competition law. What we inferred out of this discussion, that examples of jurisdictional provision in some of the selected countries refer to the extraterritorial application of competition law, more so the countries like Argentina, the country like Brazil, the country like China, the country like Egypt, country like India, country like Russian Federations, South Africa, and Turkey, Vietnam, Ukraine. These are some of the countries we have taken note, and we try to pull out the provisions of extraterritorial application of competition law and making a kind of a conglomerate that from countries from Europe, from America, from Latin America, from Asia, from Africa, and from Far East Asia, South Asia, the West Asia, and we try to uh, buttress this point that how the entire process of the embarrassment of the extraterritorial application of the competition law happens to be one of the fundamental exercise and has undergoing some spectacular changes in a gradual manner. With this, dear learner, we will try to understand that what exactly we mean to denote and connote to the approaches to the embarrassment in developing countries or embarrassment of the extraterritorial application of the competition law. In that reference, what we will try to see that the extraterritorial application of competition law in different countries adopt different approaches of the extraterritoriality in ways of enforcement and remedies. So, here at this juncture, we have to understand three things. The three things are number one, the three things are number one, that we have to understand the enforcement mechanism of extraterritorial application of competition law, and then we have to see that how the embarrassment and adoption and incorporation and the recognition of extraterritorial application of competition law has been a case of inquiry among the developed and developing countries, and how they are coming of age despite their some national problems and national hiccups and hurdles. And the third aspect which needs to be examined under the approaches to the embarrassment of extraterritorial application of competition law is the fact that remedies for the extraterritorial application or extraterritoriality of competition remedies. So that goes hand in hand. So in a way, we are trying to enlarge the canvas and the focus from embarrassment to enforcement, and from enforcement to the remedies of the competition law. So the trilogy and the trinity of the objective, the one happens to the embarrassment, that to what extent the developed and developing countries have incorporated the provisions of extraterritorial application of the competition law. And on the other side, we have to see that how the entire mechanism of the enforcement of the extraterritorial application of competition law has been very well executed at the administrative and the institutional level. And the third dimension, I mean to say, about the approaches to the embarrassment, that do the approaches to the embarrassment and recognition of extraterritorial application of competition law have expressly recognized the nature, the kinds, the classification, the ambit, the scope of the competition remedies, because the question of remedy is very important after the question of embarrassment and the enforcement. So, by saying that what exactly is to be connoted and denoted in terms of the approaches to the extraterritorial application of the competition law is primarily the embarrassment, enforcement, and remedies or competition remedies. In that respect, dear learner, we have referred, and time and again we have been referring to the Bundeskartellmarkt's enforcement mechanism, and that is a kind of a mechanism that deserves a separate study, but because of paucity of time, we will not be in a positions to dwell on the entire mechanism of Bundeskartellmarkt enforcement regime to understand that what kind of the broad approaches are there. But here it is suffice to say that this Bundeskartellmarkt enforcement dimension or the regime, which happens to be prevalent to in Germany, have de facto recognized the extraterritorial effect, especially in cases of merger, and it tries to see that how the different company used to practice their anti-competitive conduct and abuse of dominance and cartelization and combination of regulation, the review of the merger. So that seems a very interesting study from the standpoint of what is called the approaches to the embarrassment of extraterritorial application of competition law. Then from Germany in Europe, we will switch over to the far Asia, and in the Asian country, in the North Asia or the South Asia or the West Asia or the East Asia, we find that a country, that Korean Competition Authority, have approached this problem in a very brilliant manner, and that deserves our attention in the sense that the Korean Competition Authority have addressed the question of extraterritorial application of competition law to primarily correct unfair practices by the global companies, particularly in the context of information and communication technology and digitalization of the economy. Here, dear learner and viewer, the emphasis is to be that there are two sets of the challenges before the competition authorities in every jurisdictions, be that the developed world or the developing world or the underdeveloped world. And the Korean competition authorities approaches to the embarrassment of extraterritorial application of competition law deserves a close scrutiny, simply because of the fact, not because of the fact that they have express verbose recognition of the extraterritorial application in their competition law, not because of the fact that the Korean competition authorities have been very careful and circumspect and have been threshing out all its competition objectives and policies in right earnest, but to see that there are two kinds of the companies, and the companies which are doing the abuse of dominance or anti-competitive conduct or behavior, or indulging into the predatory prices, or having some kind of a cartelization, then we have the challenges happens to be very daunting when it comes to the information and communication technology based industry. There it is very difficult to decipher and to see that how these industries are managing the entire market. And most of the time which we have experienced, that the competition authorities, any national competition authorities, seems very baffled and bewildered as to how to get these information and communication technology based industry in the arena of digitalization of economy, where every business have been hooked to the digital environment. Then that requires a special attention. And when we study the approaches to the competition law, it is nothing but very important for us to see and see from a different perspective the other companies and the companies which have been primarily focusing on information and communication technology and digitalized environment. So, in that reference, the approaches to the embarrassment of extraterritorial application of competition law of the Korean national authority seems of utmost importance. Then we are referring to, as we refer to the Germany, we will refer to the United Kingdom's Competition and Market Authority, and we will see that how the jurisdiction over the conduct outside the UK in certain circumstances happens to be a challenge by the United Kingdom's Competition and Market Authority. And then we will certainly move that how we can best protect the consumer and as well as producer in a globalized economy. And for that reference, we have to take up the case study of the United Kingdom Competition and Market Authority. And then again, we will be having a kind of a very hybrid kind of the national competition authorities model to understand and engage ourselves to the approaches to the competition law, or in that respect, from Germany to Korea and from Korea to United Kingdom, and then we are referring to the South African competition. As we have seen in the last lecture, that how South African Competition Act of 1998 has been very careful in having a kind of an agreement, the combined agreement in relation to the economy, in relation to the labor, in relation to the socio-economic welfare. And it has very neatly differentiated that what are the different focus and the strategy of having a combined agreement. But all such agreement, solus agreement, or the combinations are not bad in the eye of the South African Competition Act. And the South African Competition Act has very rightly have differentiated and kept socio-economic kind of a agreement valid, or any kind of a collective bargaining as a valid point. And it has been expressly dealt in the Competition Act of 1998 of the South Africa. And then we see that how the South African Competition Act 1998, which has incorporated in the first generation of reform of the competition law in 1990s, they had a provision of extraterritorial application. They feel that the conduct outside but affecting Africa is a kind of a concept which have been subscribed by the South African Competition Act, that they look at the conduct and then see that what are the cascading effect of the conduct of a particular company. And in that sense, we can certainly say that the South African competition does not directly recognizes the effect doctrine, but it has given effect to the effect doctrine of United States antitrust law. And then the South African Competition Act also act on the principles of location of the anti-competitive effect. So that is something very important, that their approach to the embarrassment and enforcement and the remedial measures of the competition disputes happens to be that they see the principle of location of anti-competitive effect rather than the geographic origin of the action. So the forum of competition dispute resolution is something else, and the entire remedial exercises and the dispute resolution mechanism is something different. And what is that where the conduct of anti-competitive activities have been a kind of a factor in having a cascading effect on the domestic market and have been arresting the sense of competitiveness in the market are two different things. And the South African Competition Act 1998 has been very categoric in that respect. And then we see that then from Germany to we went to the Korea, we went to the United Kingdom, and we again went to the South African jurisdiction to locate the exact connotation of the approaches to the embarrassment of the competition law. And then what we found that the France auto right de lag concurrence is the another kind of an example to look at to to clear our understanding and to have a very diversified kind of a concept of the approaches to the embarrassment. And what we find that in the France, the competition law or the competition national authorities from the rampart of the auto right dealer concurrence primarily focuses on addressing competition concerns within the country, but the countries which may voluntarily extend geographical reach of their commitment, then this authority, auto right DLAG concurrence, comes in action and swing into action for combating all kind of anti-competitive activities. And taken as a whole, the European Union in that respect, their approach to the embarrassment of extraterritorial application of the competition law, it applies the competition rule in extraterritorial manner, and it again emphasizes, as it has been emphasizes by the South African Competition Act, that it put emphasis on the conduct has an immediate and substantial effect. So the direct, immediate, and substantial effect uh, of the conduct is the focal point of the European Union's embarrassment to the extraterritorial application of the competition law. And as a matter of leverage, as a matter of leeway, and as a matter of the fillip, the European Union also tried to see the principles of cooperation, the principles of comity, and among those 27 countries and the competition agencies, and then try to address the harm to the competition in a very broad or a generic sense, with the spirit of the effect and the conduct in question and the effect, and then the principles of comity and the principles of cooperation. So, dear learner, what I just wanted to convey that when we talk of the enforcement, we should not turn our blind eye to the question of embarrassment. And when we have understood the embarrassment of extraterritorial application of competition law in previous lectures, we have to understand in a very clear and in specific terms as to what constitute the approaches to the embarrassment of the extraterritorial application of competition law. And with this, I think that that approach will go a long way in deepening our understanding of the approaches to the embarrassment of the extraterritorial application of competition law. And now we will be switching over to what we can call is the diversity and the diversified approaches to the competition in relation to some of the statute, which we have already covered during the last lecture, but and we have also concluded to the point that these laws just offers a variety of the panorama that somewhere, be that Vietnam, be that Ukraine, be that Turkey, be that Egypt, be that India, be that South Africa, or be that China, Brazil, and Russian Federation, the diversity of the studies which have undertaken, and we reflected very pinpointedly their national laws to bring home the conclusion, the approaches to the embarrassment to the extraterritorial application of competition law is something very interesting and discourse, and that discourse is to be seen in a very critical and dispassionate manner to have a very kind of holistic and a broad understanding of the embarrassment of the extraterritorial application of competition law. With this, thank you very much, dear learner and viewer, and have a happy learning.